Hi there. I'm Dr. Mark Krasnoff, and I practice general internal medicine in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm making this video to tell you why I've decided to vote for Claire McCaskill this fall, and I hope you'll agree to do so as well. First, let me tell you something about myself. As I said, I practice general internal medicine. I have a wife who practices OBGYN, and a son in college, and 2 sons in high school. I love the great outdoors. I've coached youth baseball for my son, and I've also hiked at Philmont and in the Boundary Waters with my Boy Scout son. And today, I'd love to be outside, but I'm spending a little time indoors because I think this is a very important election. My patients are very diverse. They come from wide backgrounds with a wide range of views, as do my family members and friends. Now let me talk to you a bit about the election and why I support Claire McCaskill. Josh Hawley presents himself as someone who represents Missouri values and says that Claire McCaskill does not. He's a former prosecutor and he's a current attorney general of the state, and he understands law enforcement. So that's what he has to say for himself. Claire McCaskill, on the other hand, is an experienced senator with lots of knowledge in the area of health care and other issues that are really important and vital to Missourians. She does share our values, and the idea that she doesn't is just not tenable. She and Mel Carnahan and John Danforth and Kit Bond and Roy Blunt are all viable Missouri senators and former senators who support Missouri values. Claire McCaskill is one of us, like all the others, and the idea of suggesting otherwise is just not supported by reality. So Josh Hawley's going to have to come up with another more compelling reason why he would be a better candidate than our experienced centrist senator. Claire McCaskill is a centrist. She's worked across the aisle with Republicans as much as any other Democrat that I know of, and pretty much as the Republicans who've been willing to cross the aisle and work with Democrats. It's been hard to find compromise in a very divisive world, and that's what Claire McCaskill does for a living. She's really not out to promote an extreme view on anything. She's just out to find reasonable compromise between extremes, and that's what I think we should have as a practical representative from Missouri. Let me talk a bit now about the healthcare issue. Josh Hawley, as you know, has joined a lawsuit to repeal the Affordable Care Act without providing a replacement. Now, incredibly, he's on television saying that he supports forcing insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions. He supports doing that as a member of the United States government. He supports the government telling the insurance industry what it needs to do. He wants to force the insurance industry to cover people till the age of 26 if they're under their parents' plans. Those are provisions of the Affordable Care Act. They're reasonable, they're helpful, they're beneficial, and they should be maintained. But you have to have a way of doing it. You have to have a way of paying for those things because they don't come cheap. And the compromise that was developed in the Affordable Care Act, and it was a compromise, took into account a lot of special interests and yet got the job done in putting in those provisions and some other very positive provisions, which I'll talk about. The Affordable Care Act, in addition to the 2 benefits of pre-existing conditions and young adult insurance till the age of 26 on their parents' plans, also did a number of very positive things. It improved Medicare. It made sure that doctors like me who practice primary care are reimbursed for preventive services, and that the doctors who perform preventive services, such as colonoscopy, are reimbursed for that as well. Screening tests and other things to keep people healthy and make the healthcare system more efficient in working for all of us were part of the Affordable Care Act. And then there's one of the biggest benefits of all, maybe the biggest, that 18 million people who previously did not have health insurance are now covered thanks to the Affordable Care Act. States like Ohio, under Governor Kasich, that expanded Medicaid, now have health insurance for the members of their society who work hard for a low income, and if they face an expensive illness would be better off not working if they didn't have the Affordable Care Act coverage that's available through the expansion of Medicaid. So in Ohio, if you get very sick and you don't have a high income, you're better off continuing to work and benefiting from the insurance available through the Affordable Care Act, through Medicaid expansion. In Missouri, without that, if you get an expensive illness and you don't have a high income, you're better off unemployed so you can spend down to poverty and get on Medicaid, which is there for people who have very low incomes and are not working. I don't think that's the kind of incentive we want to have in Missouri. I think we'd much rather follow Ohio's lead and expand Medicaid in the state. Josh Hawley is just not credible on this issue, and it's really pretty shocking to see him on television supporting the positive aspects of the Affordable Care Act as if he invented the ideas, and then having no way to pay for them. Also, he has an advertisement that shows a forked road, and down one road is this terrible path down Claire McCaskill's way, which he represents in his way, and misrepresents, and says that Missouri shouldn't go down that road because it doesn't comport with our values. Then he walks down an empty road to nowhere into the sunset with nothing stated as to what's down his road. He doesn't say how he would pay for pre-existing conditions without making insurance premiums go higher. He doesn't say how he would cover young adults on their parents' insurance to the age of 26. If you get rid of the mandate for health insurance, the cost of care for the unwell gets higher and higher. And frankly, it's a responsibility to have health insurance because any of us can end up sick in the emergency room. And it's consistent with all of our values. I know it's consistent with Josh Hawley's values and conservative values and liberal values that if someone comes into the emergency room having a heart attack or a stroke or a broken leg, we're going to take care of them, whether they can afford to pay or not. And the society is going to come up with the money for that. The insurance companies don't have a money tree. They get their money from businesses and working people through taxes and premiums and the parts of our insurance that we pay ourselves. And the government can help subsidize it, but they only get their money through taxes also. So pretending that we can just borrow our way to enormous deficits and afford these things is not practical. It doesn't make sense to have given a very large tax cut to the rich and a small tax cut to regular people, which expires in 10 years, and expect that the growth that's going to come from that will miraculously make America strong. When you have a deficit that high, you have to borrow more, and it puts you in a weaker position relative to other countries. So it's only practical that we find reasonable compromise to address America's healthcare needs and use our taxpayer dollars wisely in order to support the basic needs of working Americans. I have a lot of other things I would say. Let me just say this. I am Jewish, and there was a recent tragedy yesterday in Pittsburgh in which 11 people were killed by a machine gun, semi-automatic weapon that essentially can fire so fast it can kill a lot of people in a hurry. Anybody who would get inside and see the scenes of that horrific crime would probably have a different view of these weapons. And as a doctor, I would just say this. It's a lot easier to diagnose which weapons need to be highly regulated and are dangerous rather than trying to diagnose which people should have their Second Amendment rights restricted in terms of their access to guns. We know which guns are too lethal to be out in people's homes and out in the world in open or hidden carry. It's not reasonable to have no gun restrictions on mass murder weapons that have no role in places like Philmont, where I shot a rifle and a shotgun and a pistol and had a great time aiming at targets. An AR-15 would have just knocked all those targets out in one swoop. A 5-year-old could have done it. But you have to aim those other guns, and it's a lot more fun. So the idea that we're not going to regulate weapons for safety is absurd. It's much better to do that than to threaten the Second Amendment rights of people based on some doctor's idea that they might be dangerous, when we really can't tell. But we do know which weapons are dangerous. Claire McCaskill has a practical approach to that issue, and her views may be more conservative than mine on that issue, but they're definitely not as extreme as Josh Hawley, who would never regulate anything in the way of guns. So in summary, I hope you'll strongly consider voting for Claire McCaskill this year. She's a known quantity. She's been around for 12 years. I think 6 more years of her experience in the Senate would be a good thing. I like the idea that Missouri is different from Massachusetts and Maryland and different from Mississippi. We don't need to be a red state or a blue state. We can be a bellwether state as we used to be. We can have a senator from each party. We can be practical, strong, have shared values, work across the aisle with each other, and take good care of each other, whether we're rich, poor, left or right, male or female, gay or straight, etc. So we're all together in this, and I hope you'll agree that Claire McCaskill really does represent Missouri values, and vote for her this fall. Thank you very much.